Hey everybody, Bill Sky, the Fortran guy this time. And what we're going to do is we're going to introduce you to Fortran in this video. We're going to show you how to set it up on Windows and Linux. A couple of different ways on Windows and also on Linux. Actually, the instructions on Linux are pretty much the same as the MSYS that we're going to be using on Windows. But we're also going to be taking a look at the Intel compiler, how to download that for absolutely free, how to install it. And boy, I'm telling you, for those of you that don't think Fortran is a valid language, you don't think that Fortran is for anything but old guys like me, well, in a way you're right, but in a way you're really wrong, because Fortran is still used by many, many scientists. There's a lot of code out there. Mathematicians use it. Yes, Python is encroaching on Fortran's territory, but Python is not a compiled language. Fortran is. So Fortran allows you to have really, really fast mathematical programs, really nice user output or data output for reports and for displaying information. Very, very useful language, not dead at all. And if you think it's dead, okay, fine, stick with Python only. But if you want to learn as much as you can about computer languages, computer science and its languages, and you want to be as marketable as possible, you need to learn a little bit about every language you can. That includes Ruby, PHP, HTML, all of them. Don't stick with just one language. Take a look at them all, and that's why I'm producing these videos. So let's get started on installing Fortran on Windows, and then we'll do one on Linux. All right, so I've got Windows 11 up here and running, and this is absolutely the newest version of Windows. Is version 23H2 2024-01. So that's a really new Windows. And I'm going to go and I'm going to download MSYS. Now, fine, I've got it. Don't you just love all these pop-up windows? All right. So I'm going to go to MSYS2.org. Now, we're going to install Fortran a number of different ways. The first way I want to do it, though, is an open source method, so you're not stuck with anybody's specific distribution. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to MSYS2.org and we're going to click on to download the installer. And now what this is a full MinGW development environment that also has kind of a Linux flavor to it and allows you to insert things really, really easily into Windows. Now, I'm not sure what this is doing here. All the security stuff on Windows, so let's take a look. Let's say if it did download anything. Well, it says unconfirmed. I've never seen this before. This must be something new. So let's take a look what we can do here. I'm going to click on link or keep. I'm going to keep anyway. So I guess it's trying to protect me from stuff that I know is good. All right, good. So I went ahead and downloaded it. Wow, something new. All right. And I'm going to double click on the MSYS2 installation. Now, what MSYS2 is, it's an environment, and keep everything default. It's an environment that lets you install development tools that will run under Windows, and it's really, really a neat way of doing this. It's very, very quick. The other thing that I'm going to install is I'm going to install Eclipse. And Eclipse is an integrated development environment that has Fortran support installed. So I'm going to just type in, I think it's eclipse.org. There we go. And I'm going to go down here to download, or up there to download. Now, instead of downloading the installer, I'm actually going to go to download packages. And I'm going to download the Eclipse IDE for developers. And in this case, it's Windows 64-bit, so that's x86-64. I'm going to go ahead and download that. Now you can download the installer, but I've actually seen problems with that, and I really recommend that you don't do that. So go ahead and download that installer, or not the installer, but the Eclipse for Java. And you're going to see the benefits of doing this. And I'm going to move that over here to the side. I'm going to double click on the Java, on the Eclipse for Java zip file. I'm going to open up a File Explorer window. I'm going to go to my C drive, so this PC and then C, and I'm simply going to drag the Eclipse folder that's inside the downloaded zip file. I'm going to drag that to my C drive and just drop it. and then it's going to copy all the files you need. That's the installation. Then once the installation of that is done, I'm going to go ahead and install the Fortran support. And I'll probably install the C++ support just because I write a lot of C++ code. Okay, so let's go ahead and let that finish. And now it says run MSYS2 now. Go ahead and leave that clicked and click finish. All right, now let's make this resolution a little better. I'm going to go up to options in the title bar. I'm going to go to text. I'm going to select a little bit nicer of a font. So it's a little bit easier for you to see. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to run a couple of commands. So I'm going to say pacman-syu. What this is going to do is it's going to update everything in the MSYS2 system. Now you might think that because you downloaded it, everything is updated, but it's not. I'm not sure how the infrastructure works. Oh, it looks like it is updated. That's awesome. Okay, so now I'm going to type in pacman-S-needed base-devel min-gw w64 x86. Is that it? X80. Oh, forgot the x86 64 toolchain. And I will put all of these commands in the description of this video, no problem. And I'm sure I typed in something wrong. It looks like I did. I forgot an E right there. Let's just go ahead and press enter. Now it's going to download about 1 GB of data, but what this is doing is it's installing all of the development tools, all of the min-gw 64-bit development tools that you need. Now you might say, well, what about the 32-bit development tools? We really don't need those. So let's go ahead and let that run. Now while that's running, I'm going to go ahead and start up Eclipse. I'm going to open up Explorer. I'm going to go to this PC. I'm going to double click on local disk C. I'm going to double click on Eclipse, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the Eclipse application. I'm going to hold down my right mouse button, drag that to the desktop, let go, and I'm going to say create shortcut here. Okay, so you never have to worry about Eclipse getting to it by having to navigate the File Explorer. Then I'm going to double click on it. Now in previous versions of Eclipse you had to install Java, but in this version of Eclipse I believe Java is part of the environment that you download. So we're doing multiple installations at the same time here. We're installing all of the min-gw infrastructure and then Eclipse. Now for those of you that don't know the difference, min-gw downloads the tools and the compilers and the linkers that you need, but Eclipse is not a compiler or a linker. Eclipse is actually an integrated development environment that knows how to talk to the compilers and linkers. So it's kind of nice. Now you can do all this. You could do all your Fortran development using command line, but there's a lot of you out there that don't like to do that. I'm going to show you either way. All right, so then there's this concept of workspace with Eclipse, and a workspace is an area of your disk where you're going to be storing all of your Eclipse programs. I always just pick the default. I never click use this as the default because I might want to change that, and it's a little bit more involved to change it. So if you're just experimenting, if you're just trying to learn, I think you can just leave that unclicked and click launch. And then Eclipse will go ahead and start up. Now the first time it starts up, it creates a whole bunch of files and directories, so it'll start up a lot faster in subsequent startups. Now as you see, it's installing a lot of stuff. It's installing GCC, which is a C and C++ compiler. It's just down. Oh, look at that. It looks like it downloaded GCC Fortran. That's awesome. So we won't actually have to download the GCC Fortran. It's already there. All right, excellent. Okay, now Eclipse is up and running, and let's go over to Window, because I like to do it this way. I like to go to Window and Preferences, and I like to turn off. Well, they're trying to get money. That's a good thing because Eclipse is actually a very good product. I like to turn off Always Run in the background. When I'm updating or installing something, I like to see it in the foreground. So I'm going to click Apply and Close, and I'm going to go up to Help, and I'm going to say Install New Software. Now from Install New Software, it says where do you want to install it from. I'm going to install it from all available sites. And what it's doing right now is it's going out on the internet and it's checking for all of the software available in all of the source libraries that it has access to. And we're going to go ahead and check our MSYS2. That looks like that's opening up, or that's installing okay. It's installing a lot of stuff, but installing everything you need to be able to do this. Okay. Here we go. All right, so now we're going to scroll down to programming languages. I'm going to expand that. Now you can click all. I've seen that have problems, so I really recommend that you don't do that. And because I always use C and C++, I'm going to click the development tools, the development tools SDK. But let's go down here to, let's find gfortran. It's very interesting. I don't see it off the top of my head. Let's see if we can find it. Huh, that's interesting. I don't see it there. That's the first time I've ever seen that. So let's go ahead and click on the search, and I'm going to just type in Fortran and press enter, and let's see if we find it. And it's searching all the libraries. It's looking for the word Fortran in those available packages. Let's take a look at MSYS2. Look at it, even installs its own version of Python. That's pretty cool. Now, while we're doing that, let's start a third thing here. I'm going to bring up my browser again, and this time I'm going to search for Visual Studio. So I'm going to go to google.com, and I'm going to type in Visual Studio download. Now, I'm not talking about Visual Studio Code, two completely different things. I'm talking about Visual Studio. And let's go ahead to Visual Studio 2022 Programming Tools. And they always make it difficult. Let's click on Visual Studio up here. That took us someplace I'm not familiar with. Oh, took us to the same place. All right, so let's see if we can't find it. Here it is, Visual Studio. Visual Studio Code is fine, but we're not going to be using that for Fortran. And the reason why is because we're going to also install the Intel Fortran, which requires Visual Studio 2022. So I'm going to go down to download Visual Studio. I'm going to click Community 2022. And it goes ahead and starts that download. And it downloads pretty quick. Can't believe this is still taking time. All right, great. So this installed. Now this is MSYS2, so let's go ahead and type GCC version. GCC. Oh, yep, I forgot. I always do this. I'm in the MSYS2 administrators panel. I'm going to click exit. Down here in search, I'm going to type MSYS2, and I'm going to go to the MSYS2 MinGW64. That's what you're going to be using. And I'm going to type GCC version. All right, great. I'm going to type gfortran version. All right, gfortran is installed. If you want to install COBOL, you can also install COBOL. I show you how to do that in other videos in my COBOL playlist. And I find this very interesting that I don't see Fortran anywhere here. That's really unusual. And that's Eclipse. So let's go ahead and finish everything up here. Okay, so I'm going to actually cancel out of the Eclipse, and I'm going to start up Visual Studio installation. All right, so let's go to Downloads, Visual Studio Setup. Now what this is going to do is it's going to download a bunch of stuff, so I'm not going to make you watch the video while it's downloading everything, so I will temporarily halt it. And go ahead and continue. So now it's actually installing the full-blown installer. All right, let's see if we can find gfortran. If I press enter there and see what we get. Okay, here's the Visual Studio installer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here to the desktop development with C++. I'm going to turn that on, and I'm just going to click install. Now, I don't even know if you noticed, but it said it was like 10.4 gigabytes in size. So it's going to take a little while. So we're going to go ahead and minimize that. This is kind of like a cooking class, right? I get something started over here on this burner, and I'm going to move over to the next burner. And I'm not really sure why we're not getting anything on Eclipse there. That's really interesting. It might have something to do with the fact that that particular tool server, the server that has the Fortran support, is currently not there. Okay, so let me explain a little bit of this command on the MSYS2 while those other tools are installing. gfortran is the compiler name, gfortran. And when we put a space there and then 2 dashes in the word version, it gives you information about the version. I can also type man gfortran. And normally on Linux you could do that, but it doesn't look like that the manual command is actually installed in MSYS2. But I could actually start writing code here. So let's wait until we get the Eclipse up and running. And while we're waiting for that, I'm going to type in exit here. And while we're waiting for that, what I'm going to do is I want to download the Intel Fortran. So I'm going to do a Google search. And I'm going to search for Intel Fortran download. And there's the Intel Fortran compiler. I'm going to click on that, download the standalone version. That's the one I like to download. I don't want to have to be online to install it like Visual Studio requires me to be. So I'm going to click on download. And it asks me what it is that I want to download. And the website is kind of dynamic, so it kind of jumps around a little bit. So I'm going to download. I don't know why it keeps jumping around like that. So it looks for the they have their own C++ compiler too. So let's see what we got here. So I'm looking for the Windows one. I think this is it right here. And I always like to download the big one because I don't have to be online to install everything. All right, so it's going to go ahead and download. Now my Windows is running kind of slow right now because it's downloading an awful lot on that Visual Studio installation. So go ahead and let that install, or download, I should say. All this is going to come together. We're going to see all this work together here, but we're just getting the infrastructure set up. And this is what you have to do every time you start coding in a different language. You have to download all of the tools, and that's basically what we're doing. Okay, so I'm going to minimize that. And again, Eclipse is causing me some trouble here. Not sure why. So let me go ahead and see if I can possibly kill that process. So I press Control-Alt-Delete. I'm going to go to Task Manager. I'm going to go up here to Eclipse. Not sure why it's not showing. Here we go. And I'm going to go find Eclipse. And I'm going to kill that process. There it is right there. End task. Okay, it ended. All right. So let's take a look at our Visual Studio. Visual Studio is running. It looks like the Intel compiler is done downloading. So with the Intel compiler, what you definitely want to do is you want to absolutely wait for the Visual Studio to finish installing and then install the Intel compiler. And let's go ahead and let this run, and then we'll continue to install the Intel compiler after Visual Studio is all set up. Okay, so it looks like Visual Studio is all set up. I did uncheck the Start Visual Studio automatically. I did uncheck that. And then I'm going to go ahead and close the installer. And let's see what we've got here. So now I'm going to go down here to the search. I'm going to type Visual. And there's my Visual Studio 2022. I'm going to go ahead and start that up. And all I'm going to do is make sure that it's installed correctly. This is not the installation of Visual Studio, or I'm sorry, of Intel Fortran, but we just want to make sure Visual Studio. And I'm going to skip. Now, it is a good idea to get a user ID and password just so you're not bothered by Microsoft to get one. They don't bother you. They don't send you marketing information. I'm not really sure why they want you to do that, but it's a good idea to do that. I'm not going to do it here just because I don't want to make you go through the whole process watching me. So I'm going to skip this for now. I'm going to start Visual Studio using dark mode. I know everybody likes that. Let me go ahead and empty my recycle bin while that's going on. All right, so let's go ahead and create our first project. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to create a C++ project just to make sure it works. I'm going to click Console App, Next. I'm just going to call it Tests. CPP. Actually, let's make sure we selected C++. It looks like there it is, C++, so we're okay. Okay, so test CPP, And I'm going to click create. And again, all we're doing is testing the Visual Studio installation. Now, if you remember a little while ago, we already downloaded the Intel. So okay, so let's go up here. It looks like it. So it created our hello world. Let's go up here and say build solution. And hopefully we'll see the solution building down here. Override here is the source file. So there's our CPP. I'm going to click on debug because it said 1 succeeded, 0 failing. I'm going to say start without debugging. And we should get a window that basically just says hello world. And if that happens, then we're okay. I think we're in pretty good shape right now simply because the compiler did run. It looked really good. So the first time you start this on Windows, it's going to take a few seconds. Just go ahead and be patient with it. That's kind of interesting. It said it couldn't find the debug console. So let's go up to debug, or let's go up to debug, and let's say start debugging. Let's see if that runs. Okay, it seemed to run. It seemed to go okay. So let's go up to debug and say start without debugging. Okay, so I guess the first time you use Visual Studio, the first program that you do, you have to just say start with debugging, and then after that it seems to work. So that's kind of unusual. Okay, so it's working. So I'm going to go ahead and close my Visual Studio now, and let's go ahead and install the Intel compiler. Okay, so I'm going to go to my downloads, and I'm going to double click on the gfortran compiler. All right, and it's going to extract things. Just go ahead and take the default and let it extract everything out of the file. And I'm going to click continue. And it's going to download some things, not a lot, just about, looks like about 21 megabytes of data. So not too bad. Now, if you're curious, this Fortran compiler is absolutely free. You're not allowed to use it for profitable reasons. By that I mean you can't write a program and then sell it using it. You have to buy a compiler if you do that. Otherwise, you'll be against copyright. But go ahead and click I accept and continue. I normally just do the default. Now, here's what's important, is that the Intel Fortran requires Visual Studio 2022 to be installed, or 2019, and if it's not, the installation will die. But because we already installed it, it shows it and it's clicked. So go ahead and just click the right button. I don't like my data collected, so click on do not, and it should go ahead and install everything. Now this will take a few minutes. It installs the compiler, installs the debugger, installs everything you need, and then it integrates all of that into Visual Studio 2022, which makes your Fortran coding really, really easy. We're going to play around in this series with both the MSYS2, the open source Fortran, as well as the Intel Fortran. There are some differences, especially the fact that the Intel Fortran is highly optimized, will make your program run really, really fast, but isn't 100% necessary to learn Fortran. However, it is nicely integrated with Visual Studio. So let's go ahead and let that finish installing. Okay, it looks like the installation is off. You can go ahead and, or done. You can go ahead and click on open the Getting Started guide. I'm just going to go ahead and leave that off, and we're going to create our first program. Okay, so to do that, we're not going to bring up any kind of a, well, actually, before we do that, let's take a look at what Intel actually installed. I'm going to click on All Apps here, and I'm going to go down to Intel. And you see the Intel One API 2024. I'm going to click on that, and you can see the command line prompt. So you can see the 32-bit as well as the 64-bit command line prompt. So if you actually wanted to develop your code using the command line, which we're going to do with MSYS as well, you can do it there. However, if you want to do it on Visual Studio, go down here to the search, type Visual, there it is right there, and let's create our first Visual Studio COBOL app. I'm sorry, oh my goodness, Fortran app. Now what has happened is Intel has installed a new template or a new category of templates for Visual Studio, and I'm going to click on Create New Project. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop down all languages. I'm going to click Fortran. You see that that's new. Platforms, I'm going to select Windows, and project types, I'm just going to select console. And you can see a main program code, that's kind of like a hello world program, and an empty project has no source code. So let's click on the main program code and click next. And I'm going to say Fortran, or I'm sorry, Intel Fortran test, and click create. And there's our very first Fortran program. Looks a little bit different. A lot of things are the same, but a little bit different. You can see our print. Now, when you print stuff in Fortran, it's really different. We'll go through all of that in this course. But you can see the program statement right here to start the program. This is the end of the program. It specifies the bottom of the program. So let's go up here to build and click build solution. Now, we just want to make sure that the compiler installed correctly. It looks like it did. 0 errors, 0 warning. I'm going to click on debug, start without debugging, and we should get a window that says hello world. There we go. So there's your first Fortran program in Visual Studio. Now, I do admit Visual Studio has a really nice user interface, but there really is no such thing like that in Linux. So if you want to do this in Linux, it's a little bit different. We'll do that later on in the video. Okay, so let's take a look at the problems that I had in Eclipse. I don't know why I can't find the Eclipse Fortran support anymore. So if you want to use Eclipse, which is using the free open source compiler, you definitely want to go to packages where we installed the Java developers. But instead of that, there's one down here called for scientists or scientific computing. I'm going to download that Eclipse instead. And we're going to go to Windows x86 64. And go ahead and let that download, and that includes everything for Fortran support. So go ahead and let that. Now, while that's downloading, there's one other thing that we have to do for MSYS. I'm going to click on the Explorer, and I'm going to right-click on this PC, and I'm going to click on Properties. And under Properties, I'm going to click on Advanced System Settings, and then I'm going to go to Environment Variables. Now, the environment variables, for those of you who don't know, environment variables tell the operating system where to find things. So we just installed MSYS's Fortran compiler. I'm going to go down here to search. I'm going to type terminal. But if I say gfortran, I don't see anything. It's going to actually give me an error that there was a problem. So what we have to do is we have to tell the Windows operating system where to go look for the Fortran executable. So I'm going to go to path because that's the variable we want to modify. I'm going to double click on it. I'm going to click new. I'm going to click browse. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my C drive. So I'm going to go to this PC, the C drive. I'm going to go to, now if you did everything default, it should be just like this. I'm going to expand MSYS64. I'm going to drop down to MinGW64. And I'm going to click bin and click OK. So that's going to tell the operating system where it can find everything we just installed using the MSYS. All right, so let's go ahead and now let's type, what was it again? Oh, terminal. And I'm going to type GCC and press enter. There, so it went to the GCC compiler, which is in the MSYS directory. I'm going to type gfortran. And it did the same thing with gfortran. Awesome. So we've got our gfortran running. Now, let's go ahead and create an actual project. And what I'm going to do is I actually like an editor called Genie for Fortran programming. Now, again, we've already done the Visual Studio. You've seen that going. That won't work with the gfortran, which is the open source. So we're going to download a different editor. I'm going to download the Genie editor. And I'm going to click on the Home Genie. Now, the thing I like about the Genie editor, it allows you to build stuff from the Genie editor. So I'm going to download Genie 2.0. And there's the setup.exe. I'm going to download that. Okay, there's also a bunch of plugins here. I like to download those, so I'm going to download the Genie plugins too. Genie's a great programmer's editor. And we're going to use that during this course. We're going to use setting that up, using it, compiling from it, and all that. Okay, so I went ahead and downloaded that. Now let's go ahead and start up Genie. I'm going to go to Downloads. I'm going to double click on the Genie setup. Just leave everything default. Now I'm going to install the Genie plugins. Now I assumed it downloaded it. I'm not really seeing it here. So let's see, did it download it? Oh, it didn't download it. Oh, because of that security again. So I'm going to click on keep, show more, keep anyway. All right. And there's my Genie. Actually, where is it? There it is, Genie plugin. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. All right, good. So Genie plugins is installed. All right, now let's go ahead and create our first Genie program, or let's create our first gfortran program using Genie. Okay, so let's go ahead and start typing. So I'm going to say program hello world. I'm going to indent. You don't have to, but I like to indent. This is the comment. Just so you can see a comment begins with an exclamation mark. Then I'm going to say print asterisk comma hello world. And then I'm going to come over here and say end program hello world. Now we want to save this, so I'm going to click the save button. I'm going to go to documents. I'm going to click the plus for folder. I'm going to click select Fortran, and I'm going to call this file. Let's create another directory. I'm going to plus hello world, and I'm going to say main.f90. Now F90 is the extension for Fortran 1990 programs, and a lot of editors and stuff still use that. So let's go ahead and say save. All right, there. So also notice that the Genie program has changed the colors and stuff like that because Genie knows about F90 programs. All right, so let's go to terminal. Now I will show you how to do this from Genie, but for right now, let's just do it in terminal. And actually, there is a terminal that you can use in Genie. I don't know if I'm really ready to set that up yet. We'd have to go into Plugin Manager and add that. Let me see if I can find terminal. Well, no, I don't see terminal there. Okay, well I'll show you how to do that. So I'll go into Documents, change directory to Fortran. I could do this all in one line if I wanted to. I'm going to change directory hello world. Okay, so now to compile it, I'm going to say gfortran -g, which means debug symbols, main.f90 -o main.exe. Okay, I compiled. I'm going to do a directory. There's my executable, main.exe. I should get an error message because the newest PowerShell terminal on Windows, you've got to specify a location, which is the current directory. / means the current directory. And there you go, hello world. Okay, so we've got it working using Genie, using the terminal. We've got it working using Visual Studio 2022 and the Intel compiler. But let's get Eclipse working. Now, as you saw a little while ago, I went ahead and downloaded the Eclipse Scientific. And what I found was that that's a version 2023 March, 2023-03. It seems to be, and I'm not sure why, because I just installed it a couple of days ago. The Fortran is not available right now when I'm doing this video, so during the installation. But when I downloaded the scientific version, it was all built in. And what I did was I went ahead and I extracted it to my C drive under the Eclipse directory, just like I did on the Java version. Then I tried to install the Fortran, but it wasn't there. So let's go ahead and start it up. Now, before we start it up, there's one other directory that we have to set up in the path. So I'm going to go back to this PC, Properties, Advanced System Settings, Environment Variables. I'm going to double click the path. There's one more I have to add. I'm going to say New, Browse. I'm going to go to the C drive, MSYS2. Now, instead of going into min.gw, which is where the compilers are, I want to go into the user folder and then bin, click OK, OK, and OK, and then OK one more time. And I'm going to bring up the terminal just to make sure it's available. And I'm going to type make. And make is a program that is used all over the industry, more than GUIs. I mean, if you don't know make, you're in trouble. and I'm thinking about starting to create some Make videos. But you need to learn Make. Make is a program that allows you to build really, it doesn't matter, small or huge projects. When I retired from IBM, we had a set of Make files that were thousands of lines long and allowed for the automation of the build process. So important, you've got to learn it. Okay, so that is in the path now, that's good. So let's go ahead and start Eclipse. I'm not sure why the Eclipse icon isn't showing there, maybe when I reboot the Windows. And I'm going to create my very first Fortran program using Eclipse. Now, why use Eclipse over Visual Studio? Well, Visual Studio doesn't let you use the open source Fortran. Eclipse does. Eclipse also lets you compile and build projects that are non-Microsoft. So it's a pretty important integrated development environment. So I'm going to select File, New, Fortran Project. I'm going to give it a name. Let's call it Fortran Test 1. And I'm going to click on the GNU Fortran on Windows. Also, it lets you use the IBM XL Fortran, but that's kind of misleading because the IBM Fortran compiler doesn't work on x86 or x86-64 applications. Okay, so you click on the GNU Fortran on Windows, click on GCC Fortran. You can click Next. I always like to turn off Release while I'm testing things, and then click Finish. Now, the source code here is going to be really, really difficult to read using dark mode. And we actually don't have any source code, so I'm going to right-click on the project. I'm going to say New Fortran Source File, and I'm going to call it main.f90. And then it shows the code right there. It's very, very difficult to read in dark mode. So you might want to go back to non-dark mode. But I'm going to go ahead and put in a print here. I'm going to say print asterisk, comma, hello world. And then I'm going to select it all with my mouse so I can read it, and you can see it right there. So if you don't want to use, if you must use dark mode because you've got a prescription from your doctor to use it or something like that, okay, then you really can't use Eclipse unless you get out of the dark mode on Eclipse. So let's go ahead and build that. And you can see it built it. And the way it built it is it used the make utility. That's why we had to add the user bin into the path. And I'm going to go ahead and click on project or run. Run. You got to click the source code. And actually, I'm just going to press the play button. And I'm going to select local Fortran application. And there you go, hello world. Now let's go ahead and change the dark mode. Let's change it to a different mode on Eclipse. Let's see how to do that. Okay, so to do that in Eclipse, it's not too difficult. Go up to Window, Preferences, go to Appearance, under General, go to Appearance, click on Appearance, change the theme to Classic. Let's apply that and see what it looks like. I'm not going to restart it right now. It's pretty bright. Let's try Light and see what we get there. Okay, it's the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and restart Eclipse, and let's see what it looks like. And click Launch. Now, I'm not sure why dark mode is so popular. It does use less energy, possibly, but you know we've used light mode forever, and there you can see it. So not all programming tools are dark mode enabled. They're very, very close to all of them being, but this version 2023 of Eclipse March is not as dark mode enabled as the more recent ones. So there's your Fortran project. Now let's take a look at Linux. Hey, okay, now so we have Mint Linux running. Ubuntu is the exact same way. Now this procedure is exactly the same as Windows subsystem for Linux if you have Linux running on Windows. And I've actually gotten some criticism from pretty irate Windows-only developers as to why I like to use Linux. Sorry guys, gals, everybody, but Linux is the preferred development environment by professional developers. It just is. And it's also the preferred server platform. Sorry about that, but it just is. And as I said earlier, especially in the introduction of this video, that it's better to know all the different operating systems than just one. Wouldn't you like to be marketable across 100% of the development shops as opposed to only 40%? you know, it's jobs are getting tough out there to get, and you might want to do this, increase your marketability. So let's take a look at how you would do this on Linux, and you also would do it on Linux under the Windows subsystem for Linux under Windows. So what I just did was I opened up a terminal, and again, this is just like in WSL on Windows, and I'm going to say sudo apt update. And what this command is going to do is it's going to update all of the catalogs, all of the source catalogs, all of the application catalogs, app catalogs on your Linux. And there's a few things that we need to install. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say sudo apt install build essential and say yes. And I'll go ahead and put these commands out in the description of the video. And what this is doing is this is much like the MSYS2 where we installed the development tools on MSYS2. This is installing the GCC, the C, and the C++. So if I type GCC, you can see that it's asking me for data. So the GCC program is out there. I could also type GCC-version, and there it is. It says, actually, it doesn't even know what, I think I have to have 2 dashes on the version, and it shows me the version. Now, the next thing to do is to do a sudo apt install gfortran. And I'm going to say yes. While this is installing, the Intel Pro Fortran can also be installed on here, and it's done exactly the same way as it was on Windows. So just go to the Windows version of this video, take a look at downloading the Intel Fortran and install it on Linux. It's exactly the same way. Now what you should do is you should do what I just did first. You should do the commands to run the build essentials and all that, and also the gfortran, and then install the Intel Fortran. And the Intel Fortran on Linux doesn't require Visual Studio, so it's much smaller. We're actually almost done. You saw how long it took us on Linux or on Windows. It takes a lot less time on Linux. So now I'm going to go ahead and install Genie, and then I'll install the Genie plugins. Now the Genie plugins, those are things like allowing you to open a terminal on Genie, doing things like having different file extensions for Genie. There's a lot of really neat things on there. Okay, so let's go ahead and exit out. And now I'm going to go and I'm going to open up a file manager window. I'm going to go to Documents, and I'm going to right click and say create a new directory called Fortran. I'm going to go into that. I'm going to right click, create folder, and I'm going to call this Hello World. I'm going to go into that. I'm going to right click, and I could say create a document, empty file, or I could just bring up Genie. So I'm going to go ahead and just go to the start and type Genie, and there it is. And now let's go ahead and type some code in. So I'm going to say program hello world. This is a comment. I'm going to say print asterisk hello world. I'm going to say end program hello world. Now that must be named exactly the same as it was up above here. So this must be named exactly that way. Okay, now I'm going to save it. I'm going to go to Documents, Fortran, Hello World. I'm going to call this one main.f90. And there now we've got our syntax highlighting. And now let's go ahead and let's actually build the code. And the Genie on Linux automatically comes with a terminal. So I actually have a terminal there. So what I can do is right now I'm not in my Documents Fortran Hello World directory, but I can get there very quickly by right-clicking and saying Set Path from Document. Now I'm in there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and compile this. So I'm going to say gfortran -g main.f90-o main. Look how fast that was. Now I'm going to go ahead and run it, and there you go, Hello World. So much easier than on Windows. Now you can do the exact same thing on Linux with Eclipse. Now while I was recording this, I found out that some of the code repositories on Eclipse are down. The servers are down, so you can't download everything on the day that I was doing this, but you can do the same thing in Eclipse. And so real quickly, let's go ahead and show you how to do this. So I'm going to go on into my browser, and I'm going to go to eclipse.org. and I'm going to click download. I'm going to go to download packages. And if I wanted to, I could download the scientific version. I don't even know. Let's see. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? PHP embedded. See, this is different. And it's only been like 10 minutes since I did this on Windows. And all of a sudden, the scientific version, the science version isn't there anymore. I'm not sure what's happening right now. But let's go ahead and download the Java version. Click download. This takes a few seconds to download it. Now we're going to put this in a location which makes it easy to run it. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up a file manager window. I'm going to go to downloads. I'm going to double click on that. I'm going to go back to Linux user, and I'm going to drag the Eclipse folder inside the compressed folder into my home folder. And Eclipse is pretty big. I mean, it shows 383.9 megabytes. Okay, so now in my home folder, I have an Eclipse folder. I'm going to double click on that. And oh, look at what we did. We downloaded the exe file. Oh, okay, I should have downloaded the Windows. So let's go back to Eclipse. I should have downloaded the Linux, not the Windows. So let's go back to eclipse.org, download. That's okay. We all make mistakes, right? And by the way, if you think you don't make mistakes, not sure what to tell you. Okay, so let's go to Linux x86-64 and download. But the process is going to be exactly the same. That's the beauty of Linux. Everything, you don't have to install everything. Zip files, tar files, it doesn't matter. They're all supported. Okay. All right, so let's go to downloads. There's my Eclipse zip from Windows. I'm going to delete that. Let's open up the tar file. Okay, let's go to Linux user. Let's drag Eclipse into my home folder. Double click the Eclipse folder. There's the Eclipse icon. XPM is the icon. That's not the executable. You want to double click the Eclipse. And there's 2023-12. So that's the most recent one. I'm going to launch it. It's going to create a directory called Eclipse Workspace. And let's actually see from here if we can install Fortran support. Select all available sites, get rid of this browser. And I don't think it will, because I think there's a problem with the servers right now. You know, I'm doing this on a Saturday. Everybody's got their feet up, having a glass of wine or something. But let's see if it's there. Okay, let's expand programming languages. Again, I always like to install the C++ tools. And now let's go down and see if there is Fortran support. Yep, it's still not there. So there must be something going on with the servers that Fortran support is not there. So you can do the same thing with the scientific version of Eclipse on Linux. Okay, so there is our first Fortran program. Showed you how to install all the tools you needed. Hope to see you in our next Fortran video.